My father kicked me out for not giving him my paycheck, but what I did next destroyed his business. I don't know if you've ever had someone you love turn on you over money, but I have, and that someone was my own father. To give you context, I'm 22 now, but this story started when I was still fresh out of college. I grew up in a house where money was everything. My dad wasn't physically abusive, but he ruled our home like a king. Whatever he said went. If you questioned him, even a little, you were being disrespectful. From as early as I can remember, my dad drilled one lesson into me. When you grow up and start working, you give back to the family, that's your duty. It sounded noble when I was a kid, like I'd be supporting my parents the way they supported me. But as I got older, I realized his definition of giving back was basically hand me your paycheck. My mom? She was quiet, almost invisible in the household. She worked part-time at a bakery and barely spoke up when my dad was on one of his rants. Sometimes I'd catch her eyes when he was lecturing me, and I could see guilt there. She wanted to defend me, but she never did. Fear kept her silent. After finishing college, I landed my first real job in IT. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I felt like I finally had control over my life. I remember the day my first paycheck hit. I was so excited. I wanted to buy my mom something nice, maybe a necklace, just to thank her for everything. But my dad had other plans. He stormed into my room like he owned me and said in his usual commanding tone, "So, how much are you giving me this month?" At first I thought he was joking. I laughed a little and said, "Well, I kinda need to save right now. I'm thinking about moving out soon." The look he gave me was pure disgust. His face turned red, his lips tightened, and he barked, "Don't you dare disrespect me. You think you're grown because you got one paycheck? You think you can just keep all that money to yourself after everything I've done for you?" I tried reasoning with him. I said, "Dad, I want to help when I can, but I also need to start saving for my own future. I just can't give you my whole paycheck." That was like lighting a match in gasoline. He exploded. "You ungrateful brat. I fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay me? By being selfish? You're spitting in my face." The argument went on for what felt like hours. Finally, he shouted the words that changed everything. "If you don't want to contribute to this household, then get out. Don't bother coming back." My heart sank. I was terrified, but also angry. I told him fine, I'd leave. He smirked like he didn't believe me, but I packed a bag, grabbed my laptop, and walked out. My mom tried to follow me to the door, whispering, "Please don't fight with him. Just give him something." But I couldn't. I couldn't hand over my future just to keep him happy. That night, I crashed at my friend's apartment, sleeping on his couch. The reality hit me hard. I was basically homeless. No savings, no apartment lined up, nothing. Just a job and a small paycheck that barely covered rent in my city. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. I wasn't under his control anymore. No more handing over my money, no more lectures about how I owed him everything. The first few weeks were brutal. I bounced between friends' places, sometimes even slept in my old beat-up car when I didn't want to burden anyone. I ate cheap instant noodles, showered at the gym, and worked long hours at my IT job. But something inside me refused to give up. I told myself, this is temporary, I'll get out of this. And then something clicked. At work, I overheard some people complaining about local electronics stores. They were talking about how overpriced everything was, how warranties were scams, and how they wished there was an honest shop in town. Guess whose shop they were talking about? Yep, my dad's. That night, lying on a friend's floor, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. What if I built an online store, something small at first, where people could buy the same products my dad sold, but cheaper, with real warranties and customer service that actually cared? It sounded crazy. I didn't have capital, I didn't have a warehouse, I barely had my own room to sleep in. But I had one thing my dad didn't: the internet. He was old school. His store was physical, no real online presence, just some local ads. He didn't even know how to run Facebook properly. If I went digital, I could beat him at his own game. And that was the moment the seed was planted. Once I had the idea, I couldn't let it go. Of course, there were 100 reasons why it wouldn't work. I had no startup money, no apartment, no storage space. But what I did have was a laptop, a job that covered basic expenses, and the determination to prove to myself and to my father that I could make it without him. So I started small. I spent hours after work teaching myself everything about e-commerce, setting up online shops, drop shipping, digital advertising. I watched countless YouTube tutorials, read guides, and even messaged strangers on forums asking questions. I decided to start with drop shipping. That way, I wouldn't need inventory or a warehouse. I'd list products online, and when people bought, the supplier would ship directly to them. My margins would be smaller, but it was safer to start that way. When I launched the site, I barely slept for days. I designed a simple logo, slapped together a website, and ran a $50 ad campaign on Facebook. I didn't expect much. Honestly, I thought it might flop. But one morning, I woke up, checked my email, and there it was. My first order. I remember sitting up in my sleeping bag on my friend's floor and just staring at the confirmation email. Someone had trusted me with their money. Someone had picked my store. The profit on that order, $10. That was it. But to me, it felt like $1 million. Of course, things didn't stay smooth. Shipping delays, supplier mix-ups, and impatient customers almost made me quit. I had one guy threaten to sue me because his headphones arrived 2 weeks late. Another woman wrote a scathing review saying I was just another scammer. I could have given up right then. But I made a decision. Every single unhappy customer was going to get treated better than they'd ever been treated by my dad's store. I refunded people, I sent apologies, I even offered discounts just to prove I wasn't like him. Slowly the tide turned. For every angry review, I got 2 positive ones. And when the good reviews started piling up, more customers came. Here's where things got interesting. I knew my dad's store had a terrible reputation. He charged double the market price, refused refunds, and sold warranty plans that were just pieces of paper with his signature. If something broke, he'd blame the customer. So I deliberately targeted his type of customers. I ran ads that said things like, "Tired of overpriced electronics in town? Try us. Fair prices, fast delivery, real warranties." I never mentioned his store by name, but I didn't have to. Everyone knew. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then the reviews started coming in. I used to shop at that downtown place, but this store is way more honest. Finally, someone who doesn't scam you like Dad's store does. Every time I saw one of those comments, it was like a shot of adrenaline. I was stealing his customers. The same people he'd been ripping off for years were now coming to me and thanking me for being the opposite of him. Within 3 months, my little side hustle was making more than my IT job. I couldn't believe it. I'd work all day at the office, then spend my evenings handling customer service, updating the site, and negotiating with suppliers. I was exhausted, but it felt worth it. Meanwhile, word was spreading around town that my dad's shop was struggling. I didn't hear it from him directly, of course. We hadn't spoken since the night he kicked me out, but friends and even my mom would drop hints. Sales were down, customers were angry, he'd been yelling more than usual. Part of me felt guilty. After all, this was my dad. But then I remembered that he chose to treat me like an ATM instead of a son. He made his bed. I was just building my own life. One evening, about 4 months into running my store, I was grabbing groceries when I overheard a conversation between 2 guys in line. "You hear about Dad's store? They're going downhill fast." "Yeah, man. Everyone's shopping online now. There's that new site that actually delivers what they promise. Way better deals." I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. They were talking about me. It was surreal. I'd gone from being kicked out with nothing to being the reason my dad's empire was crumbling, and people had no idea. The more my business grew, the more pressure it put on my dad. I started hearing that he was offering desperate discounts, trying to keep customers. But the problem was, once people realized there was a better option, they didn't want to go back. I even got a couple of emails from people who flat out said, "Hey, I used to shop at Dad's store, but I'll never go back after how badly he treated me. Thank you for being different." Each message was both satisfying and heartbreaking. Satisfying because I was winning. Heartbreaking because I realized just how much damage he'd caused in people's lives for years. Around month 5, my mom called me out of the blue. She sounded nervous and sad. "Your father's not doing well. she said quietly. The stores, it's not the same. He's angry all the time. He blames everyone. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but she quickly changed the subject. Before hanging up, she whispered, I'm proud of you. Don't let him stop you. It was the first time she'd ever said something like that to me. I cried after that call. For so long, I thought she didn't see me, didn't care. But maybe she had been quietly rooting for me all along. By the 6th month, it was over for him. His store couldn't compete anymore. Rent was high, bills were piling up, and customers had moved on. One evening, I walked past his shop on my way to meet a friend. The lights were off. The open sign was gone. A paper notice on the door read, closed. Out of business. I stood there for a long time, just staring. Part of me wanted to feel bad, but all I felt was closure. He had kicked me out to protect his own wallet, and now his obsession with money had cost him everything. A week after I saw the closed sign on my dad's store, fate decided to throw us together. I was at the grocery store loading some basic stuff into my basket when I noticed him in the same aisle. He looked older. His clothes were wrinkled, his face tired, and his shoulders hunched. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. This wasn't the powerful, loud man who used to bark orders at me. This was a man beaten down. When our eyes met, I froze. Part of me wanted to turn and walk away, but it was too late. He recognized me instantly. He stormed over, his voice rising as if the whole store needed to hear. You, he spat, this is your fault. You ruined everything. My store, my reputation. You destroyed me. I stood there, gripping my basket tightly, my heart racing. For a moment, I was 12 years old again, scared of disappointing him. But then I reminded myself, I wasn't a child anymore. No, Dad, I said calmly. I didn't ruin you. You did that yourself. You built your business on greed and lies. All I did was give people a better option. His face twisted with rage. Don't you dare talk to me like that. After all I gave you, this is how you repay me? By stabbing me in the back? I took a deep breath. You kicked me out. You told me I was on my own, and I survived. You can call it betrayal if you want, but I call it survival. For a second, he just stared at me, speechless. His mouth opened like he wanted to say more, but no words came out. Finally, he shook his head and muttered, You'll regret this, before storming off, leaving his cart behind. The whole store was silent. People had definitely overheard. And in that moment, I realized his pride was all he had left. After that confrontation, we didn't talk again for a long time. My mom would call occasionally, updating me on how things were at home. She said he spent most of his days bitter and angry, blaming the world for his failures. I wanted to feel sympathy, but every time I thought about how easily he'd thrown me out, my compassion evaporated. He chose money over family. He treated me like an ATM, not a son. Meanwhile, my life kept moving forward. My business was booming. I upgraded from sleeping on friends' couches to renting my own apartment. A year later, I even hired 2 employees to help manage orders. For the first time in my life, I felt secure. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I bought my mom a necklace for her birthday, the one I had wanted to buy back when I got my first paycheck. When I handed it to her, she hugged me tightly and whispered, You made it. That moment meant more to me than any dollar I ever earned. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that first argument. I wonder how different things could have been if he had reacted with kindness instead of greed. If he had encouraged me to save, to grow, to build something for myself. Maybe we could have built it together. But that's not who he was. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. People show you what matters most to them when they're tested. For my father, money mattered more than me. And as painful as that was to accept, it also set me free. I don't tell this story to brag about beating my dad, because honestly, there are no real winners here. He lost his business, I lost a father, my mom lost the peace of her household. But what I did gain was independence, self-respect, and proof that I could stand on my own. If there's one takeaway, it's this. Never let someone, family or not, convince you that your worth is measured only by what you can give them. You are allowed to protect your future, You are allowed to walk away from people who see you only as a resource. So, do I regret it? Number? Do I wish things had been different? Of course. A part of me still wishes I had a father who cared about me more than his wallet, but wishing doesn't change reality. In the end, I didn't destroy his business. He destroyed it himself by refusing to treat people with respect. Me, his customers, even my mom. All I did was step up and build something better. If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Would you have handed over your paycheck just to keep the peace? Or would you have walked away, even if it meant risking everything? I know what choice I made, and though it was hard, though it cost me the relationship with my dad, I'd make the same choice again. Because now I have something he'll never take from me again: my freedom.